I didn't realize the Avengers were missing their most important weapon until I rewatched the quiet moments after Endgame. Because the real danger isn't the next monster, it's the next idea that breaks reality. When people rank Avengers, they do it like a scoreboard. Strength, speed, brains, magic. But I started noticing something the moment the MCU's threats became cosmic and the team became scattered. Every new crisis feels less like a battlefield and more like a storm system, tearing holes in the sky. In that kind of chaos, the Avengers don't just need a hitter, they need a compass. And the more I traced the pattern, the more one name kept rumbling under everything like distant thunder. Thor. Not because he's trendy, or because he swings an axe that looks cool in slow motion. Because he's the one hero who has fought the universe itself and kept walking. Thor's experience turned into muscle, grief turned into wisdom, and myth turned into strategy. He's been a prince, a soldier, a failure, a savior, and a wandering survivor. That kind of evolution isn't just character growth, it's survival training. And when the sky starts cracking open, a compass matters more than a sword, because someone has to point the team toward the threat they can't even name. Let's compare him to the others without the fan edits and hype. In raw physical terms, Thor is terrifying because he's durable and adaptable. He doesn't just hit hard, he survives the kind of punishment that would erase most heroes. He fought the Hulk and walked away. He endured the energy of a star long enough to forge Stormbreaker. He took blasts from gods, monsters, and armies and still stood up with blood in his teeth. And yes, Wanda at her peak could warp reality, but that power burned like a wildfire that consumed her judgment. Captain Marvel is a cosmic missile, but she's often operating alone, far away, fighting wars the team doesn't even know exist. Hulk is raw force, but unpredictable, and sometimes his own mind is the battlefield. Strange has precision, but even he makes mistakes when his ego gets involved. What makes Thor different is consistency. He scales with the threat. He's a force that doesn't run out after one heroic moment. That's why his strength feels like a constant, not a spike he can escalate with the danger instead of collapsing after the first shockwave. But power is only the surface. The deeper advantage is where Thor has been. His life is basically a travel map of the universe's worst corners. He's seen civilizations that worshipped the Infinity Stones as if they were gods, and he's seen the stones used like tools by a mad titan. He understands that some forces aren't weapons in the human sense. They're laws of creation wearing jewelry. When the Avengers first met, half of them were debating authority, boundaries, and whether aliens even existed. Thor had already watched entire realms fall. He'd fought dark elves older than human history. He'd listened to Odin talk about wars that never made it into any Midgard textbook. And when Thanos finally arrived, Thor didn't need convincing that the universe could end. He already knew. That's the real gap between him and most Avengers. They learn the truth when it arrives. Thor learned it growing up. He learned early that the universe doesn't reward optimism. It rewards preparation, sacrifice, and the ability to keep moving when the ground turns to ash. I started connecting the dots when the multiverse became the new frontier. For most heroes, the multiverse is a shocking discovery, like opening a door and finding a staircase where there shouldn't be one. Peter Parker panics. Ant-Man gets dazzled. Even Strange treats it like a lab experiment with spiritual consequences. But Thor's entire worldview was built around the impossible. He grew up in a realm where magic is normal, where destiny is discussed over dinner, where a rainbow bridge is basically public transportation. His closest companion for years was Loki, someone who could change faces, rewrite situations, bend trust, and weaponize belief. That means Thor's instincts are calibrated for deception on a cosmic scale. He's fought enemies who don't just want to kill you, they want to reshape what you think is true. And when you think about multiversal threats, that's exactly the danger. It's not just alternate worlds. It's alternate rules. It's reality with different cheat codes. To him, different realities aren't a theory. They're just different roads on the same endless battlefield, and he's already bled on most of them. Now let's talk about leadership, because Thor after Endgame is not the same man who used to demand battle like it was entertainment. The jokes made it easy to dismiss him, but I think that was the point. Thor experienced something superhero stories usually avoid: failure that couldn't be fixed. He didn't just lose a fight, he lost the universe. He aimed for the head too late, and the price was half of all life. Then he killed Thanos and felt nothing because vengeance doesn't resurrect the dead. That moment shattered him in a way no villain ever could, because the enemy wasn't stronger than him. The enemy was time. The enemy was consequence. And I noticed something powerful in how he responded. He didn't become cruel. He didn't become obsessed with control like so many broken heroes do. He collapsed. And then, slowly, he rebuilt. That pain carved out the ego that used to lead him, and in its place grew a leader who listens first, fights second, and understands grief as a language. And the leadership he has now isn't loud, it's lived in. He knows what it's like to be worshipped and what it's like to be laughed at. He knows how quickly a legend becomes a punchline. That humility matters when you're trying to rebuild a team that's fractured by loss and new alliances. Sam Wilson is a noble Captain America, but he's carrying a symbol forged in a different era, in battles that were simpler. Captain Marvel is decisive and unstoppable, but she operates like a lone satellite, dropping into danger and leaving before the emotional fallout settles. Strange is brilliant, but he's still the kind of man who thinks he should hold the steering wheel, even when the road becomes a nightmare. Thor has been all of those things, and he's outgrown them. He doesn't need to prove he's worthy anymore. He's already failed publicly. He's already been broken. And because of that, he can lead without performing. When you've lost parents, siblings, friends, and an entire home world, you stop leading to look heroic. You lead because nobody else can carry it. Which brings me to the most dangerous assumption in the MCU, that science will always be enough. I love the genius side of these stories, Tony's suits, Shuri's innovation, Pym's quantum doors, but science in the MCU has a pattern. Every breakthrough creates a bigger shadow. Build a robot to protect the world, and it becomes Ultron. Open the quantum realm, and you invite Kang's era. Study the multiverse, and you trigger incursions. Science is powerful, but it's also predictable, because it's rooted in rules. The scary part about Doomsday-level threats is that they don't care about rules. They break them. They bend them. They twist them until your smartest plan becomes a trap. And I think that's where the new Avengers could fail if they aren't careful. They'll try to compute the apocalypse. They'll try to engineer a fix. But what happens when the threat isn't a problem to solve, but a reality that refuses to be solved? When the next catastrophe arrives, it won't care how smart you are if it can rewrite the equation mid-sentence and turn your cure into the disease. Thor is the bridge between gods, heroes, and mortals, and that bridge is exactly what's been missing since the team scattered. He can walk into a room of scientists and not be intimidated by jargon, because he's watched science look like sorcery. He can stand before witches and gods and not flinch, because he has been both a believer and a skeptic. He's fought alongside the Guardians, negotiated with kings, and faced beings older than planets. And what makes him dangerous in a good way is that he can translate the language of every battlefield. When a mortal hero says, "This makes no sense," Thor can answer, "It doesn't have to." When a god says, "Fate demands sacrifice," Thor can say, "Then fate will answer to me." When a scientist says, "We can't measure this," Thor can say, "Then stop measuring and start surviving." That is leadership across dimensions. That is diplomacy with thunder behind it. He doesn't just translate between worlds, he earns trust on both sides, and that trust is the only currency that works when the universe is collapsing. I also think people forget Thor has already survived Doomsday more than once. Ragnarok was literally the end of his world, and he learned a lesson that would destroy most teams. Saving everyone doesn't always mean saving everything. Asgard fell. The people lived. That distinction is brutal, but it's the kind of wisdom you need when reality itself starts cracking. In a multiversal collision, the choice won't be between good and evil. It'll be between two kinds of loss. You'll have to decide which world survives, which timeline gets erased, which universe gets sealed off like a quarantined room. And that kind of decision poisons teams from the inside. It turns allies into judges. It turns heroes into executioners. Thor has already carried that weight. He has watched his home burn and still stepped forward to protect what remained. That means when the Avengers start arguing over impossible choices, Thor is the one who can say, "We choose life for us," and actually understand the cost. If Doomsday is an event, not a person, Thor is the one Avenger who has trained his heart to accept endings without surrendering to them. There's another advantage Thor has that nobody talks about enough: his relationship with time. Not time travel like Stark's math, but time like history. Thor has lived for over 1,000 years. He's watched empires rise and rot. He's seen heroes become myths and myths become warnings. Most Avengers are shaped by urgency because they're mortal. They have a limited body, a limited era, a limited number of battles before age or trauma catches them. Thor can play the long game. He can endure a war that lasts decades. He can watch an enemy retreat, and instead of calling it a win, he can recognize it as a pause before the next wave. That patience becomes a weapon when multiversal threats start stacking like dominoes. Because if Doomsday is coming, it won't be announced with a single invasion. It'll creep in through anomalies, fractures, strange visitors, collapsing skies, and timelines that start bleeding into each other. Thor's the kind of hero who senses that pattern early. He's survived enough storms to smell one on the horizon. That's the kind of endurance that holds a team together when every victory feels temporary, and every portal opening might be the last one you ever see. When I picture the next Avengers standing at the edge of an incursion, I don't see weakness, I see confusion. Because the enemy won't just attack their bodies. It'll attack their certainty. It will make them question what's real, what's worth saving, and whether they're even fighting the same war. That's how Doomsday truly wins, by turning unity into doubt. By making every hero feel isolated even in a room full of allies. And that's where Thor's greatest weapon shows up. It isn't Stormbreaker. It isn't lightning. It's perspective. Thor knows the universe is ancient and brutal and beautiful, and it doesn't care about your plans. That sounds bleak, but it's actually freeing because it removes the illusion that someone else will fix it. When you stop waiting for rescue, you become the rescue. And Thor is the walking proof of that mindset. He lost everything and still chose to keep his heart open. He still chose to protect strangers. He still chose to be worthy. In the middle of that doubt, Thor can remind them that fear is normal, but hesitation is lethal, and courage is simply deciding to act anyway. So here's the final thread I pulled that tied everything together. The Avengers don't need Thor because he's the strongest. They need him because he's the only one who can unify the MCU's 3 battlefields at once, the scientific, the mystical, and the mythic. Doomsday won't be a single villain with a single plan. It'll be a pressure point that attacks reality from multiple angles, rewriting physics, corrupting magic, poisoning belief, turning allies into weapons. A team that relies only on intelligence will be outplayed. A team that relies only on fists will be outmaneuvered. A team that relies only on spells will be outmatched by something that doesn't recognize their rules. Thor stands at the intersection of all of it. He can fight like a warrior, reason like a king, and endure like a god who has learned to live among mortals. He's the storm that doesn't just destroy, it clears the air. And I think that's why in the next Avengers era, when everything starts falling apart again, the team won't look to the smartest person in the room first. They'll look to the one who has already watched the end of the world, and kept moving forward anyway. That's why I believe he'll be the emotional center of the next Avengers era, the thunder that steadies the room. So if this breakdown clicked, like, share, and subscribe. I'll see you next time. Until then, stay worthy always, friends.